My name is Kennedy NG, and I am very happy to present to you tonight the Dream City, Union City, New Jersey, which will be an option for the community to know the good things that happen in this beautiful city.
The city of Union City, a cosmopolitan city where almost all of us have seen each other. We are like a large family that through the management of our representatives, they help our citizens. And our people do volunteer work because they know that the city is run by a mayor who has shown that he is not the common politician, but that he works for his community. This program is an extension of information where we are going to have participation of personalities from the public and private sectors so that they can keep us informed of the community. May that be educational activities and everything that benefits us.
Good evening, Union City, the Dream City. Tonight, we have a very special guest, one of the best administrators and teachers that Union City School District have had, Mr. John Bennetti. And who is Mr. John Bennetti? He's the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instructions, and Educational Programs.
That's correct.
And I understand we're going to be conversing about education, about your experience in the high school when you were the principal. Can you talk a little bit about your educational background?
Sure. So for undergraduate degree, I went to Rutgers University in Newark. I achieved 2 masters, both from NJCU, one in educational leadership, one in multicultural education. I have a number of certificates. I have a teaching certificate that goes from pre-K to 8th grade. I have an ESL certificate. I have a supervisor certificate, principal certificate, superintendent certificate.
Without you telling me all this, your background, I mean, the way you express yourself, I can say that you are a well-educated educator.
That's nice.
How do you consider yourself? A teacher or an administrator?
That's an excellent question. I think I identify as teacher first and foremost. I have always wanted to be a teacher. It's kind of like a calling for me for as early as I can remember. Loved teaching in the classroom. Still teach officially. I teach graduate school for people who want to pursue a leadership position in a district. But regardless of the roles that I have taken through the years for Union City Public Schools, I feel that there's always moments of teaching. Whether I'm working with other building principals, opportunities to teach them how to become stronger instructional leaders, whether I'm leading a team, there's always moments to educate those people on the team to make sure that they understand what it means to give good quality education in our schools, or whether I'm working with students. I just always, at the heart of everything I do.
Do you remember the first day as a teacher?
I do remember the first day.
Were you nervous?
I was nervous, but incredibly excited. It was that moment that I had been dreaming about for a very long time, and this is going back almost 30 years now.
What grade was that?
6th grade.
6th grade. Can you tell me some of the challenges that you face in any educational field or schools when you have a multicultural students?
I think it is incredibly challenging regardless of the school, elementary, high school, preschool. You have to constantly ensure that the decisions you make, the programs you set up, the people you lead, that you are constantly keeping the community at the forefront. And what I mean by community is understanding the students that you serve. That's what we are supposed to be doing in education. We have to make sure that what we're doing inside the classroom or at central office or leading buildings is that we're speaking to the needs of the community. And our community is represented by rich diversity and multiculturalism. So that has to have a presence. It has to have a voice in everything we do.
Mr. Bennetti, do you remember the first day of the first year teaching sixth grades, how was the population about Hispanic and other cultures?
It was 100% Hispanic, a diversity of South American, Caribbean. It was a blend at that time of richness and diversity of Hispanic culture.
Good to know. Tell me a little bit about your experience during the years that you were the principal of the Union City High School.
Yeah, those were great years. Those were...
What year was that when you started?
2011.
So like 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
after they inaugurate the new high school.
Yeah, it was shortly thereafter. Yep, I had worked in that school. The central office superintendent at the time, Mr. Sanger, asked me to go in for the first 2 years when it was in operation, when it was newly built, to oversee and share the leadership with the principal that was there, and I would oversee the academics and the intervention practices.
Great.
While the building principal took care of plant management, budget, fiscal management of the building operations, all of that, whereas I took care of the academics and instructional leadership.
Having, I would say, 95% of Hispanic population students
Yeah.
in other culture. Any specific challenge with those students?
I never found challenge in terms of the diversity of the culture. I think the challenge in working within a high school, leading a high school, is that you have to understand this age group, and you have to understand the community, and you have to understand that in order for your school to be successful, you need to ensure that you build a community feel within that school, so that, because there's lots of distractions outside, right? Kids at that age group, yeah, can easily be pulled off. So you want to make sure that you cultivate a sense of family, a sense of community within that schoolhouse, so that kids have a place of belonging, of respect, a sense of ownership. And once you have that, once kids buy in and are invested in that school community, the other problems kind of fall to the wayside. The trick of that is, at least I found, was the challenge, was to make sure that you found enough things within that school community to keep kids hooked. So whether it was clubs and organizations, whether it was athletics, whether it was fine and performing arts, if at that time when I took it over, kids wanted to find a place. So as long as you could find a moderator, a club, it had a mission, a vision, and it contributed to the school community, you got it. We would do it. We were up to something like 46 clubs and organizations.
Wow.
There was something for everyone. And the more we cultivated that, the more we celebrated kids, the more respect within the organization occurred, and the problems seemed to fall more by the wayside. So you could focus in on what we needed to do there, was get those kids ready for post-secondary.
Those students that come from many countries, that,
Right.
and doesn't have to be Hispanic, that they come to continue education, let's say the second year of high school,
Right.
and they don't know the language.
Right.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. So when we receive students in from other countries, depending on where they're coming from, they may come with a strong base or background in their native language, a lot of formal education, or depending on where they're coming from, they'll have little to no education. So you have to ensure, which is what we do really well in Union City, is that there's a diversity of programming, so that when a student comes in, let's say in the first scenario, he comes in maybe only knowing Spanish but has some education, he gets put into a suite of classes where his native language is dominated in the instruction and the course material, with an increase of English as a second language, the target language, and that's gradually built in side by side so that the strength occurs in native language and then can transfer over to the target language. But sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes you come...
And the reason, I'm sorry for
No, it's
interrupting you.
okay.
the reason I ask you because I know a lot of family that when they come from Dominican Republic, from
Right.
Cuba, from Ecuador, the parents are afraid to send their kids to the high school because the language barrier.
Yeah.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
Now that you are explaining, I feel more confident.
Oh, good.
And I know that the high school, by history, has a lot of programs to help
Right.
those people that come from different
Oh,
cultures
absolutely.
that they do not speak the language.
Right. And we have programs that not only assist students with little to no education, where they get specialized port of entry, we call those programs, which give a lot of language assistance, but we also have a strong network of support services, a strong suite of guidance counseling, both in Spanish and in English.
How many years were you there as a principal?
4 years.
4 years.
4 beautiful years.
4 beautiful years. And I understand you speak Spanish too.
I do. Don't start a
I will
conversation.
not,
Don't
but
test me.
But have you had experience that you spoke in Spanish to some of the parents
Oh,
or
yeah.
students?
Well, it definitely helps, right?
Right.
I happen to have enjoyed Spanish when I was in high school, and naturally coming here, I learned very early on, 30 years ago, that the key to success is to connect with the community, connect with the parents, and if language was the way to do that, I wanted to make sure that I was at least giving it my all, my best effort. So through the years, strength in the language develops a little bit. You use it a lot. Situational. It's mostly used in the context of school, so that helps a lot too. So, yeah, I would like to say I can speak Spanish. Yes, and it certainly has bridged a lot of the gaps between the communication of what I was trying to do and what the parents
Good
needed.
to know. Explain me the daily routine as a principal.
Oh, okay.
And I know it's very hard, that position.
Yeah, the high school principal position is a definite challenge because the community in the high school is so vast. There's just so many more things occurring. There's a network of services that are constantly at play. The size of the building, the size of your staff, the size of the students, naturally add to the needs, right? So there's constantly something going on. And then in addition to all of that, you have a whole suite of after school activities and events that you have to go to. When I say have to, you want to be there for your kids. So you want to be there at the plays and the sporting events. So it's never an 8 to 3 job. The high school principal is 6 in the morning till 9 at night, many nights during the week and a Saturday. So the amount of time, effort, everything that you put into doing that position, it takes a lot of time and effort. So it's a little harder.
It is challenging.
It's challenging, but it's great because the reward is great.
Those years that before the Union City High School, I understand was Emerson High School and
Yes.
Union Hill High School.
Correct.
If you know,
Yeah.
what is the difference in terms of education when we had in Union City 2 high schools and now that we have the unification of the high schools?
Yeah, it's a great question too. Although we had 2 high schools at the time, they did have very unique identities. And that's okay for the schools to have their own unique identity. It tended to always seem that one school favored, let's say, certain successes with fine and performing arts as opposed to another school's successes with our ROTC program. So small differences like that. So they had their own unique identities. When the schools merged, though, it made it easier for the district to steer the success of all high school students. They were in one location primarily. So you were able to layer in programming, layering in post-secondary readiness initiatives in one place. So it enabled the success of those things to occur because you had control of it in one place. So bringing the 2 schools together definitely had its own unique challenges in the beginning because, they were 2 rival high schools, right?
Exactly.
But there was a lot of work done before they merged to kind of get everyone together, and the merge actually happened relatively smoothly between students coming together and staff coming together.
Good explanation. Do you have any advice for new teachers to come?
Yeah, absolutely. Know your community. Make sure you truly understand the lives of the kids, what they're going home to, what they're bringing to school with them. Understand your students. Take the time to know your students and their families, first and foremost. Another piece of advice would be ready to differentiate. There's not one size fits all. So no matter what you're teaching, understand that kids learn differently. And you have to be prepared for that. So understand that differentiating what you do in the classroom to make sure that your content is delivered and comprehensible to the kids, that's something you're going to have to
Do you recommend any new teacher who has a bachelor degree to go to a higher education?
Always, absolutely. You should be lifelong learners. You should be a reflective practitioner and a lifelong learner. Never stop learning, because the needs of your students are always going to change. The accountability is always going to change. You have to remain current for the best interests of the stakeholders you serve. Okay. So you yourself should always look to better yourself.
Did you know that I was a music teacher in Emerson High School for a year?
Were you really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
1987 with Mr. Platt, one of the music teachers for many years, and Miss Marandino, I remember.
Sure.
Who share one of the programs in Union Hill in Emerson High School.
Wow. That's great. Was it hard for you to leave that? Well, you're doing it now, right?
Yes.
You're still teaching.
I love teaching.
Yeah.
I love more than a one-to-one basis.
Yeah.
But I had a good experience. I did my student internship in Washington Elementary School.
Oh, wow.
And the part of my educational program in Emerson High School. And then they hired me as a teacher.
Wow. That's great.
A secret.
I did not know that. That's a best kept secret.
That's a good thing. And tell me about, at this point of your career as a teacher or educator, do you feel that you have fulfilled all your goals as a professional?
I will say this. One goal of mine, definitely, for someone who, like myself, who truly has a passion for this, for curriculum, for teaching, for learning, I have been fortunate enough over the 30 years to move through my career to a point now where I'm in a position where I can help steer large, big picture curriculum and instruction for the district. For a person like me who has a passion for that, that's wonderful. I'm very fortunate and blessed that people got me here. I've worked with wonderful people along the way, but this is definitely, this position I have is definitely a lifelong goal for someone like myself.
How is the communication with superintendent?
It's great. We all work as a team in Union City.
And that's why we call it a dream city.
Yeah.
Union City is a family. That's
it's a family. It's everyone working together on the same mission, the same vision, and that's to provide the best we possibly can for those kids.
And the mission is to provide a positive or the best education to the kids of students of Union City.
Always. That should be our number one priority. And as a team at central office, superintendent, assistant superintendents, directors, if we're all pulling in the same direction, then those goals get achieved.
These 3 years of COVID-19, closing this interview, can you tell me challenges that you have passed through?
Yeah. So this year I've taken on an additional role of interim principal. So kind of overseeing the school right now. So I'm really down close to what happens day to day. So I have a definite perspective that I may not have had if I was not in a school, deeply entrenched in a school. And I will tell you this, There are some learning gaps. We are working tirelessly to close those gaps, but the pandemic has left some learning gaps. And we're making great strides, but it definitely has put us a little behind, but we are making huge gains. So that is one very real challenge that we're all faced in the district. And the other one is the social and emotional well-being of our kids. So our kids are coming to school with a lot of trauma, a lot of traumatic experiences from the pandemic, and not being in a structured learning environment where teachers can rehearse and build skills, social skills, and address those needs for a little bit of time, because the pandemic has taken its toll. So we're finding that we're dealing with a lot of social and emotional issues with our students.
And I know that.
Yeah, for sure. You see that our support services, our network of support services, our cases have increased this year because the need is so vast. So we're addressing so many more challenges at a younger age even.
Exactly. Let me ask you something. And I know Mayor Stack is being involved in education like 100%. In what capacity the mayor have helped the schools of Union City?
So it's always been a partnership, and it's very interesting when I talk to colleagues or friends from other districts. They're always asked that question. How is that working? And I said, it's probably the best scenario, because the mayor and City Hall works in partnership with what we're doing on the Board of Education. So there's a synergy, there's a movement and a support with one another. We are community-based schools. We understand the need of our community. He is always there. He reaches out to us. We reach out to him when our students, our families need, because we're all serving the same stakeholder, right? It's the kid and the family. And we do it a little differently, but we're working together.
It's not a secret.
Right.
I mean, we all know, the community know that, and know because you are explaining that. You have to be blind not to see it.
Right. It's always been a positive. It's always been a positive. I have seen both in my classroom experience to a leadership experience in the district, how the mayor and City Hall have helped our kids, and we do amazing things in the city, right? We're constantly giving lots of wonderful events, giving toy giveaways and turkey giveaways, and a lot of wonderful events that happen in the city. It's all of that, and it's individualized to, look, I could call at a moment's notice as the principal, I could call up and I could request the mayor to assist me in helping one of my kids whose family has fallen on hard luck, and he's right there every time. That relationship that exists between the Board of Education and City Hall, principal to the mayor, assistant superintendent to the mayor, those things, those kinds of relationships are rare, but it makes all the difference.
It's the reality. Mr. Bennetti, thank you for taking the time to come to the Dream City.
My pleasure. I had a great time. Thank you. I love the opportunity to talk about Union City.
Thank you.